What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Earthrise Deluxe class Sunstreaker, and here we have Sunstreaker fully transformed up into his awesome looking Lamborghini Countach Alt mode. Now to my surprise, this figure is indeed a completely brand new mold and does not share any components to that of Earthrise Wheeljack. When this figure was first officially announced by Hasbro and Takara Tomy, I did believe that this was going to be either a really heavy retool of Earthrise Wheeljack or indeed just a direct repaint, but I can confirm that this figure does not share any components to that of Earthrise Wheeljack, and in my opinion that greatly benefits this release, as giving Sunstreaker his own unique mold really allows Hasbro and Takara Tomy to give us what is potentially the best and most accurate mainline representation of Sunstreaker. Taking a look here at the detailing, I think that the sculpture work here for the Lamborghini looks absolutely fantastic. You can see all of the moulding and detailing there for the doors as well as the hubcaps. I absolutely love how this time they haven't put the mushroom pegs visible on the wheels. I think that looks super cool, and you can see that they have also been painted in a really lovely silver. The air intake section here at the top has also been painted really nicely, and the sculpt work on that is absolutely fantastic. You can see all of the tubes, and as we turn around to the back we've got the vents. I think that that's a fantastic sculpted piece. And then as we turn around to the rear end of the vehicle, we've also got some nice details here. Turning around to the front section, you can see all of the windows have been sculpted really nice and precisely. I absolutely love the use of transparent blue plastic on this piece, and I'm always a huge fan of whenever Hasbro and Takara Tomy use blue plastic. So to see it here used so predominantly on Sunstreaker, I'm absolutely in love with this look. And I also really like how they've utilised some silver paint applications underneath the transparent piece, so that when we get him into robot mode, it creates for a more interesting visual. As we turn here to the front section of the vehicle mode, I think that the sculpt work for the front headlights as well as here for the front section of the vehicle looks really elegant, very nice and precise, and very accurate to that of a real life Lamborghini. Turning to the elephant in the room, however, though, they have been unable to match the painted yellow to the actual moulded in yellow plastic, which is such a shame, and unfortunately it is just as bad in person as it is appearing on camera. I really do wish that they could have perhaps spent a little longer in colour matching these, and if they had just slightly lightened up the colour here that they've used for the paint, I think that greatly would have amplified the look. As in person, you can even see here on camera, it definitely does create for this really odd illusion, and in my opinion it is an eyesore. I do wish that perhaps they could have spent slightly longer in refining the sculpt, but nonetheless the base vehicle mode I think looks really nice. Another issue that I have found on my copy, and appears to be an issue that is going to be across the board for Sunstreakers, as judging by some of the promotional images, this is going to be something that haunts this mold. I am unable to actually get the front windscreen to securely connect into the legs. You can see that it does slightly float, especially here on this side. It's not so bad on this side, but it doesn't like tabbing in all the way, which when you turn it to the side, you can see here that the windows don't quite align up as they really should, which is slightly unfortunate. As we turn to the underside, here is where you may see some similarities to Earthrise Wheeljack, as this figure basically does share the transformation engineering of Wheeljack. However, even the engineering of this does have some new elements that Wheeljack perhaps didn't have during his transformation. I am happy to report that this figure can also roll tremendously. You can see that he's able to glide with ease across the ground. There is no clearance issues with this release whatsoever. All of the wheels are incredibly free flowing, which is amazing to see. So without further ado, let's bring in some vehicle mode comparisons. So whilst on the topic of Earthrise Wheeljack, here we have a direct comparison between the both of them in vehicle modes, and it is really here that you can see that they are completely different molds. Now I believe that they gave Sunstreaker his own unique mold for a few reasons. I definitely believe we're going to be seeing some repaints of this, perhaps a red repaint and maybe even a white repaint of this in the future, probably in the Generation Selects line. So that is a reason why I believe that they did remold this, as it was probably cost effective for them to remold this, as essentially they can get multiple repaints out of this. And also this vehicle mode is accurate to that of Sunstreaker. If they would have just modified the Earthrise Wheeljack mold, it perhaps wouldn't have looked that good, and in my opinion when comparing them you can just see how drastically different they are in terms of their vehicle mode. So I am definitely glad that they did give Sunstreaker his own unique mold, and when comparing them side by side you can truly see here the differences between the molds. They literally do not share any components whatsoever, which is fantastic. However, as stated previously, when you flip them to the underside, it is here that you can see that they do share very similar engineering in their transformations, as the heads and the arms as well as the legs, they all end up in very similar places. But nonetheless, I'm really loving the mold that we have here for Sunstreaker, despite some of the discrepancies that I do have with the paint applications. And here for another vehicle mode size comparison, here we have Sunstreaker compared next to the Siege Sideswipe. And I do think that these figures here look really nice when paired next to one another. Of course, Sideswipe here is based on his Siege appearance, so this is more of a Cybertronian look. However, I really do think Hasbro gave Sideswipe a compromise in a way so that he could blend in really nicely with some of the Earth mode vehicles. In my opinion, I do think that this still does look very reminiscent to that of a Lamborghini, and I do believe Sideswipe was supposed to be a Lamborghini in the original G1 cartoon series, so when paired here next to Sunstreaker, I don't think that this here looks too out of place, and in my opinion, I do think that they scale really nicely with one another. I'd be quite eager to see whether or not they actually take this mold and retool this into a Sideswipe. I think that that could perhaps work as a base mold if they did some retooling here to the back. I think maybe that could work, but just for a comparison between the Siege and the Earthrise figures, I think that this works for now. Now, as stated previously, despite this figure being a completely brand new mold, he does share very similar engineering to that of Earthrise Wheeljack, so if you do have that figure, the transformation for Sunstreaker here should be a complete breeze, although some of the aspects of the transformation have been slightly flipped and reversed to give Sunstreaker his own unique spin. So to begin with, you're going to want to come here to the top section and just remove this section. You could essentially leave this tabbed in, however, just for clearance and for ease when moving the arms around and not worrying about scratching the silver paint, I'm going to detach this. What you're then going to want to do here is just untab the arms from the side and then just take this section here and extend this here at the top. Repeat the same process for the opposite side and then just bring these down, and we can worry about those later on. You're then going to want to detach this top section here from the legs. Just give these a split and then just extend those similarly to Earthrise Wheeljack. Just extend and tab those nice and securely into place. Repeat the same process here for the opposite side. Something to note is that seeing as we now no longer have to worry about that windscreen piece popping off, the transformation here for the legs on Sunstreaker is a lot more enjoyable and is a lot more fluid in my opinion. And then now you're going to turn around here to the front, bring this section here forwards, and then as we turn around to the back, flip these sections down in order to create the heel spurs. And believe me, this does greatly amplify his stability in robot mode. We're now going to want to take this waist section here, rotate this all the way around, flip up the head section, take this section here and lift this up also, tab that into place and then rotate the waist around. Come here and flip out the hands. And that is the transformation for our Earthrise Sunstreaker. So very simple, however, in my opinion, very, very effective. And so now taking a look here at Sunstreaker in his robot mode, as stated when we were in vehicle mode, I think that Hasbro and Takara Tomy have done a really nice job with this release. He definitely is by far, in my opinion, one of the best mainline Sunstreakers that we have ever gotten, even being a contender when compared next to the Masterpiece version. Of course, he's not as detailed as the MP version, but when you take into account the simplicity of the transformation, as well as how effective it is for both vehicle and robot mode, I really do think that these Earthrise and Siege figures are really awesome value for their money, and in my opinion I get a lot more enjoyability out of these releases than I do out of some of the Masterpieces. You can see that as we turn around to the back, he has literally no back kibble whatsoever, and I actually think that he looks quite nice from the back as well. You can see that we've got some lovely sculpted in detailing here just to make the back slightly more interesting, and even some nice details here on his actual back section. So in all, I do think that this all looks quite cool. Turning around to the front, however, the head sculpt looks absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Once again, I actually do prefer this when compared to the Masterpiece version. This actually has got more details in it, and I really do love the contrast between the silver and the black helmet. You can see that the paint applications here for these sections of the helmet have come out really nice and precisely, especially where they've managed to get the black lines there. That is indeed part of the plastic. So the yellow paint apps have been applied so nicely and precisely. You can see there for the faceplate, the silver looks fantastic, and I love how they've managed to actually keep this section of his chin black. The eyes have been painted in a lovely looking blue, and even when we turn around to the back, we've got some lovely sculpting and detailing there for the helmet. I really am a huge fan of the shoulder design. You saw how simplistic the transformation was. However, I think that they've absolutely nailed this with this piece here looking very reminiscent to that of his G1 self and even to the Masterpiece, and I love the sculpted in panel lining. As we turn around here to the torso, this to me is not as big of an issue as it was in vehicle mode, seeing as how we only really see this here for the torso. In my opinion, the contrast between the painted yellow and the molded in yellow plastic doesn't look as bad here in robot mode. However, once you notice it, you're never going to be able to unsee it, and believe me, it will definitely catch your attention. But turning to the details of the torso, you can see, as stated before, the transparent blue plastic with the silver paint underneath that, with even the molded in detailing. I think that looks fantastic here, and we've also got some nice blue transparent pieces here on the sides. Turning to the forearms, lovely sculpting and detailing. The fingers have also been sculpted, as well as the side pieces, and as we turn down to the lower section, all of this has been sculpted, and they've even sculpted some detailing into the hollow gaps here for the thighs, which I just think shows how much care and attention Hasbro and Takara Tomy are putting into their mainline releases now. And here for the shins, I love how they've added this extra section in order to create for a more accurate look, and you can see some of the sculpt work on there. And as we turn it down to the feet, this section here isn't the front piece of the vehicle mode, despite actually being attached to the front section, that they have just simply added another piece on the underside. However, in my opinion, it works very well and is more than effective. So in terms of detailing for robot mode, I honestly think that this is one of the best from Earthrise. In terms of articulation, his head is on a ball joint, so he can look left to right as well as up and down. We can also get some slight side to side motion out of that ball joint as well. The arms can rotate the full 360-degree spin. He can also hinge up and down, full 360 rotation at the bicep, as well as a 90-degree bend there for the elbow, full 360 rotation there at the waist, as well as a well over 90-degree bend there for the leg. I think that's a fantastic range of motion kicking forwards and also kicking backwards as well. He can do the splits, full 360 rotation there at the thigh, as well as a 90-degree bend there for the knee. And then finally, we do get some pivot forwards and backwards due to transformation, and we also do get a phenomenal ankle rocker joint. So in terms of articulation, I think that this figure is absolutely loaded. However, similarly to that of Run Amok, he unfortunately doesn't have no wrist rotation, which is really the only thing that isn't apparent on this release in terms of articulation. But as a whole, I really do think that this is a phenomenal release. And now turning to a slight nitpick that I do have with this release in regards to his accessories. The only accessory that we do get is this air intake section that we saw for vehicle mode, and this is supposed to be his main weapon here for robot mode. However, in my opinion, I just do not think this works whatsoever. It doesn't look anything like a weapon nor a blaster, and definitely looks as if though it should be stored on his back. I do wish that they would have perhaps included a rifle, similarly to what they did with the MP release, or even if they had just repackaged a weapon from, say, Siege Cog. I think that greatly would have amplified his look in robot mode, but it is a very minor critique, as seeing as I can probably take a weapon from some of my other figures, and no doubt they are going to probably release a blaster for him in one of the upcoming Gen Selects accessory packs. So that isn't a major drawback in my opinion, seeing as how this is a completely new sculpt, and that he does come with quite a significantly large accessory, and an accessory that is painted. I can definitely overlook the absence of a pistol, but nonetheless it would have been nice to see. I just keep this section here at the back. In my opinion, I think that creates for a more accurate look and looks a lot more visually appealing here on the back as well. It makes the back design look just slightly more interesting, but as a whole, a really solid looking deluxe figure here. And once again, comparing both Sunstreaker to Earthrise Wheeljack, you can really see in robot mode that they are completely different sculpts. Literally, there are no elements that have been reused here for Sunstreaker that are a carryover from Wheeljack. Everything that you see is a completely brand new sculpt. However, of course, you can see the similarities in terms of the engineering, especially where the front torso is concerned, as well as how the legs transform. We still have very similar hollow gaps to what we got here with Wheeljack. However, in my opinion, the transformation was a very fun transformation to actually do on Wheeljack. So to get it here on Sunstreaker, I don't have a criticism with that whatsoever. And I think that the transformation actually really works quite well for Sunstreaker, as in my opinion, the vehicle mode and robot mode look as best as they possibly could. And here for another Autobot size comparison, here we have Sunstreaker compared to that of Sideswipe. And similarly to how they looked in vehicle mode, I think that robot mode, it works really well. Of course, as Sideswipe is a Siege figure, he doesn't look as similar to that of Sunstreaker in terms of an aesthetic, but I really do think Hasbro and Takara Tomy compromised with Sideswipe when they released him for Siege and gave us a very Earth mode looking Cybertronian vehicle. I do definitely think that this could pass as being an Earth mode vehicle, and in my opinion, I just absolutely love the way that these two look together. And here for a Sunstreaker size comparison, here we have both the Deluxe Class Earthrise version compared next to the significantly more expensive Masterpiece. And as stated earlier on in my review, I really do think Hasbro and Takara Tomy are producing some of the best figures that they have ever done, even giving Masterpiece figures a run for their money when compared next to the mainline releases. Now, of course, there is no denying in saying that the Masterpiece is probably the best version we are ever going to get, but when you take into account the enjoyability of the Masterpiece when compared next to the mainline release, which in my opinion is more enjoyable, and the transformation, just the cost and everything, I really do think that the mainline release, in my opinion, is the better figure. I do think that you get a lot more play value out of the mainline release than you do for the MP release, and upon looking at them, I do think that the mainline release does just as good as a job as the MP release in representing how Sunstreaker appeared in the G1 cartoon series. Now, the only area that I think is drastically different is, of course, this piece here is a lot more complicated in terms of its design for the torso than compared to the mainline, but this is actually the real front windscreen of the vehicle mode, whereas this here is a faux piece. So in my opinion, I am actually preferring the mainline release, and I do prefer the mainline's head sculpt than compared here with the MP release. But just giving you a quick side-by-side perspective, you can see that once again the mainline has an incredibly flush looking backpack, whereas the MP release had a huge looking backpack. I just really do think that Hasbro and Takara Tomy are knocking it out of the park with their War for Cybertron trilogy, and I cannot wait to see what they do for Kingdom. And here for one final comparison, here we have Sunstreaker compared next to some of the other Autobots from our War for Cybertron trilogy, and I think that he looks absolutely fantastic here with Optimus Prime, Trailbreaker, Bumblebee, Wheeljack and Sideswipe. Definitely a phenomenal looking figure in my opinion, and really one worth picking up. Now very quickly turning to reverse transformation, to begin with you're just going to want to collapse the fists in on either side. So we're then going to turn around to the back here and just collapse the heel spurs in and bring these sections up and align those up nice and appropriately. We're then going to take this entire torso piece here and rotate this around, take the front section of the robot mode, pull this forwards and then tuck the head in, and then that will allow us to then rotate this all the way around. So a lot of rotation when the torso is concerned, but it is really fluid once you've done it the first couple of times. And of course, if you have Wheeljack, then this will be an absolute breeze. We're then going to want to disengage the locking mechanism here and just fold this section into the hollow gap and snap that into place. Repeat the same process here for the opposite side, and then just connect all of this up, turn the arms around, slide those in, and repeat the same process. Just snap that nice and securely into place, and you can see that we do have some slots here that these tabs will peg into, so just snap those down. And on the other side, and there we have Sunstreaker fully transformed back into his awesome looking vehicle mode. And so that was my review on the Transformers Earthrise Deluxe Class Sunstreaker. If you haven't guessed already from this review, I am a huge fan of what Hasbro and Takara Tomy have done with Sunstreaker for this release. I really do love this figure. I think that giving him his own unique distinctive mould was definitely a push in the right direction. If they would have just retooled or remoulded Wheeljack, I probably wouldn't be saying as many positive things as I am about this release. You can see that this is a fantastic representation of the Lamborghini Countach. I really do think they've done a phenomenal job here. Of course, there are some discrepancies here with the paint applications, and I know that that is going to be a make or break for some collectors. However, if you are able to overlook this, you are left with what is, in my opinion, the best mainline release that we have ever gotten for Sunstreaker, and a much more enjoyable release than even the Masterpiece version. So I really do hope that some collectors can overlook this issue. I know that upon first glance, it does appear to be a glaring issue, but honestly, when you have this figure in hand and taking into account how awesome he is, this is definitely a criticism that I'm pretty sure many of you can overlook. The transformation, whilst it is similar to Wheeljack, it does have some new elements to it which makes it refreshed, and I think that the robot mode looks absolutely fantastic, and he looks great when paired next to both Earthrise and Siege figures. So in all, a really solid looking deluxe. I'm absolutely loving what we've been given here for Wave 3, and even Wave 2 was fantastic. Wave 1, I think, is probably one of the weakest waves out of Earthrise, but here for Sunstreaker, definitely a fantastic release. I really do hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please do let me know down in the comment section below, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.